One more regular season game day for the Auburn Tigers this season. I'm Matt Scalisi, joined by John Talty for your Auburn pregame show. John, it's been a very up and down season, a dramatic one for Auburn on a number of different fronts. It's obviously been an unusual year for all of us, but a typically stressful and never predictable season for Gus Malzahn and the Auburn Tigers this year. And we got one more game before we get to whatever the postseason is going to look like for Auburn to try and solidify whatever the legacy of this season is going to be. And, I think a lot of people are going into today in particular. It feels like everything is kind of set up for conference championships. Everything's focused on that. A lot of people sort of out there going, why do we care about some of these games that are being played today? But there, to me, and you and I have talked about this all week, it does kind of feel like there's some stakes involved in this Auburn-Mississippi State game.
Yeah, I certainly think so. And I think it's, you go back to just kind of what we've experienced in general this year in 2020 with games getting canceled and moved around. If this game was played when it was originally scheduled, especially where Mississippi State was in that part of the season, you would have expected Auburn to easily win. Nobody would have cared about that game really at all. Mississippi State was really struggling at that point in the season. But instead, it gets pushed back. It's after multiple Auburn losses. And now all of a sudden, you've got the hot seat talk is starting to crank up. And this game suddenly has much more importance in terms of, whether it's the short-term future of Gus, but also just the long-term momentum, I think, of this program. We've seen Auburn's recruiting really struggle in recent weeks. And so there's some things kind of swirling around. And I think this game has a chance to impact a lot of those.
Yeah, I think overall, this is obviously not a season that a lot of Auburn fans are happy about. We've heard it from them here on whatever page you're watching this on. They've definitely made their opinions known that they're not happy about how it went. But I think there are two categories of losses when it comes to this Auburn team, and really a lot of them under Gus Malzahn. You've got the ones that are, there's no easy losses, but there's those that you understand. There's losses to a number one Alabama team or a top 5 Texas A&M team last week. But it's really the other ones that I think stick in Auburn fans' craws the most. It's the games like against South Carolina earlier this season. Those are the ones that are really tough to stomach. Today, I think you would have to consider this one in that second category if they're not able to get a win today. Am I right?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that South Carolina loss looks worse and worse as time goes on. As we all know, they fired their coach before the season even ended. So not exactly a program, that was dominating the season. So that was a really bad loss. And like you said, Mississippi State has struggled all year round. They have, again, played better the last couple of weeks, played Georgia pretty tough, played Ole Miss pretty tough in the Egg Bowl. But, the wins just aren't there this year. Their only real big win is against LSU, which we know is a disaster in itself. And Bo Pelini is one of the worst defensive coordinators in college football this year. So, they don't really have anything to hold their hats on. And so that would be a huge win for them to beat Auburn, especially at the end of the year. So, I think that if Auburn was to lose this game, I think the fan reaction would be severe. And I think that certainly some important people would be calling Allen Green and making it known how they feel about this game.
In terms of this Mississippi State team, John, for people who haven't seen them play at all this year, what sort of, if you had to pick a part of the field where they're particularly strong or maybe could pose a problem for Auburn, what are they particularly good at?
Well, I think there's two things. One, I think their defense is better than people maybe expect under a Mike Leach team. Zach Arnett, their defensive coordinator, has done a really good job. Was, I think, a smart hire for Leach in year one. So they're a little bit better than you would think on that side of the ball. Offensively, I think it's some of what you expect. I think, Will Rogers has done a good job stepping in once Costello went down. Obviously, everybody knows that Kylan Hill left, and he was a big part of their prior offenses. So, they're going to try to throw the ball on you. I think everybody knows that part of it. But, they have some pretty good playmakers. And I think if they can kind of get in rhythm, that's when they start to beat you. And so they were able to do some of that against Ole Miss and, came up short, but certainly looked better than they had in the early part of the season.
Definitely not much of a ground attack, which I think will be a relief for Auburn fans after seeing a few teams in a row here start to gash them on the ground up the middle of the field. So at least a break in one area. The other part of this game, John, that I think I'm interested in seeing, a lot of the last game of the season in a season like this, it's about carryover. It's about how do you finish and sort of what's the tone you set going forward. And I think for many people, this season is sort of defined by how Bo Nix has played. There have been moments where the potential seems so strong and the ceiling for what this kid can do seems so high. And then moments where he really looks lost and it's frustrating to watch him. And I think a lot of those lost moments tend to come on the road. He seems the stereotype is much better player at home than he is on the road. So we get a chance today, maybe for Bo to defy that stereotype a little bit and perhaps show a little bit of home Bo on the road for once.
Yeah, and we saw Bo struggle with that last year too. I mean, that was kind of the big thing for him is, really struggling on the road against these better teams. We've, again, like you said, we've seen it this year too. I think Bo's play and development in general is critical to Gus. He's obviously put so much on Bo, thinks very highly of him. We all know he said that he thinks Bo will win a national championship one day while he's at Auburn. So in order to, I think, for Gus to continue to sell that he is the right person for the Auburn job, I think in many ways it's tied to how Bo continues to develop as a quarterback and whether he is the guy for Auburn at this point. So I do think this is a big game. Like you said, a lot of times, whether it's the last game of the season, but also bowl games, we use that to kind of drive the narrative of the offseason. And, if Bo puts up another stinker today, you're going to have a lot of Bo Nix question marks, I think, heading into the offseason.
And in general, just going to be a strange offseason anyway, because we've got this NCAA waiver that says anybody who wants to come back can come back next year. So it's hard to know. There's so many factors going into what's going to make the decision for these kids, for whether it's the receivers who are so important to Bo Nix's success or really anybody on this team. I think there are guys who probably will think very seriously about leaving early for the NFL, but nobody has to. That's I think part of the weird part about going into this offseason.
Yeah, and I think that there have certainly been some rumors swirling of guys potentially looking to transfer elsewhere as well. And we've seen that at LSU too, and the impact that has. So I think that's one of the potentially critical things. If Auburn wins this weekend, and we assume that Gus is the head coach next year, is probably re-recruiting the players on the roster and making sure that they are on board to play another year. Because with the extra year, you can transfer and basically use that as your red shirt. And not that people want to waste a year, but I think that there is potential to lose players, and so I think it'll be important for Gus to sell them on staying at this point.
A lot on the line today. When Auburn visits Mississippi State. That game kicks off at 6:30 tonight, and we will be back here afterwards. Lawrence Sisler will join me from the post-game show when that game wraps up. You can find John here with me every Tuesday on First Down South on this page and anywhere else around AL.com, so keep an eye out for that as well. John, one more regular season game day, and hope it goes well for you and your crew today.
Same to you. Excited to watch some games. Like you said, not the greatest slate, but it's another week of football, so they all matter. Yeah, exactly.
All right. Thanks, everybody.